Here Comes Honey Boo Boo is a Southern TV show set in McIntyre, Georgia, that follows Alana, also known as Honey Boo Boo, and her overweight family through their daily lives. Alana became famous after her appearance on Toddlers and Tiaras, and her family are well known for their goofy personalities and embracing their redneck culture, traditions, and Southern food choices. It's definitely hard to look away when watching the show, and to see a group of individuals embracing their fat bodies, low financial statuses, and redneck identities, which are usually presented in the media with shame and embarrassment, being mocked and laughed at. Cindy Sturtz-Rethrun, an anthropologist who focuses on cultural interpretations of fatness, in her article The Harm Inflicted by Polite Concern, explains that rural Georgia is thought of by the general public as a place filled with uneducated people, white poverty, fried food, and laziness. These are aspects that Here Comes Honey Boo Boo particularly capitalizes upon, as it grasps our attention, and due to the myth of Southern exceptionalism, or the belief that these problems are unique to the South, it often makes people feel better about their own lives. Like, yeah, that's a Southern problem, not my problem to deal with. But for me, as a kid, I remember being profoundly impressed in a way, as I'd never seen a group of people actually embrace a body type and lifestyle that was against what was actually seen as socially acceptable. I too had a belly just like Honey Boo Boo's, one that I had been made fun of by my peers. This led to my great interest in looking deeper into whether or not Southern stereotypical portrayals of fatness, poor food choices, and low social status are portrayed in Here Comes Honey Boo Boo and its surrounding discourse, as well as the ways in which these individuals on the show either reject or give in to classist and anti-fat narratives. So you may be wondering, when did fatness start to be perceived as such a negative trait, one that's associated with low social status and a lack of education? Well, Lori Cooper Stoll can help us to answer that question in her article, Fat is a Social Justice Issue. As Stoll explains, society's hatred towards fatness is partially a product of the medicalization of fat bodies and the rise of Protestantism. In her article, she explains that historically, fat was seen as a sign of wealth and prosperity, and therefore embraced, as at this time only a small number of elites could become fat due to limited food availability. As soon as food availability became widespread and more people had the ability to become fat, it was no longer seen as a sign of wealthiness, and fatness began to be associated with gluttony, low social status, and unproductivity. Interestingly, all stereotypes that are associated with the Southern lifestyle and the stereotypes perpetuated on Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. This resulted in the medicalization of fat bodies, meaning that medical professionals began to advocate for the idea that obesity was a disease, likely largely due to capitalistic reasons, since pharmacies and weight loss industries saw huge potential for economic gain from this ideology. Scholars like McGinnis and Foge in 1993 would claim that obesity, poor eating habits, and a lack of exercise was the main cause of nearly 300,000 deaths in the United States, and soon the American Medical Association declared obesity officially as a disease, even though many on the AMA team advocated for it not to be, as having more fat on one's body has been proven to lead to longer lifespans, and fat in itself is not unhealthy. However, this still led to the social construction of concepts like the body mass index scale, which has the potential to label perfectly normal bodies as obese and is based on false science that doesn't take into consideration an individual's actual fitness level, the only aspect that actually matters. In fact, the creators of the BMI scale only made a BMI of 25 in the category of overweight, as they believed it was a, quote, memorable round number, further emphasizing BMI as a socially constructed ideology, all created for the profit of medical industries. After watching 3 Honey Boo Boo episodes from Season 1, being This Is My Crazy Family, Time for Sketty, and A Very Boo Thanksgiving, it quickly becomes evident that narratives of Southern stereotypes of fatness, poor food choices, and a low social status are produced through the production of the show, and through looking at public discourse surrounding the show on TV shows like The Doctors, Dr. Oz, SNL, and South Park, we can see how narratives of anti-fatness, the medicalization of fat bodies, and classism are produced through outsiders who mock and shame Honey Boo Boo and her family's embracement of their redneck identities, fat bodies, Southern food choices, and low social status that Mama June, Alana, and her sisters hold so close to their hearts. At the same time, though, while they appear to embrace such identities, due to the surrounding public discourse that they face, they ultimately are seen falling victim to narratives of fat phobia and the medicalization of fat bodies that advocate for dieting and the shaming of fat bodies and Southern food choices that come with the redneck, low social status. So, how do they reclaim their redneck identities? In the episode My Crazy Family, the season premiere, the whole family proudly declares their status as rednecks, and they end up attending the Redneck Games, which is the same redneck games that Hartigan discusses in his article, Talking Trash. As Hartigan explains in his article, being a self proclaimed redneck for many Southerners is an identity that Southerners don't actually mind being. As he says in his own words, it's an identity that can be invested with valor, in contrast to the loathsome image of the white racist. Hartigan brings up Jim Goad's Redneck Manifesto, where he says in his own words that a redneck, as he defines it, is someone both conscious of and comfortable with his designated role of cultural jerk. While hillbillies and white trash may act like idiots because they can't help it, a redneck does it to spite you. This is definitely how Honey Boo Boo and her family conceptualize their identities as rednecks, as they shamelessly embrace their identities in their annual attendance to the Redneck Games, which, as Hartigan describes it, includes contests featuring bobbing for pig's feet, hubcap hurls, speed spitting, the armpit serenade, dumpster diving, and mud dives. As Hartigan explains, each of these performances bears some link to actual social practices and certain cultural conditions present within the South. The more one dives into Here Comes Honey Boo Boo, the more this becomes evident. As Mama June explains, attending the Redneck Games is all about Southern pride, further demonstrating this idea that they're proud of the stereotypes that come with being a Southerner that are perpetuated in the games. All of the activities are traits that are thought of as stereotypically Southern and represent low social status, not being able to afford healthier foods, being uneducated, and being dirty. Mama June continuously perpetuates these stereotypes, mostly through her humor when she says things like, "Hold on, I'm scratching my bugs," or when Alana is seen squishing her belly as she says, "I have a big pageant coming up." In this sense, it's evident that they are aware that outsiders view them as dirty in a sense, as uneducated, overweight, and the epitome of the Redneck Games lifestyle, but they take humor in being perceived this way, and just as Hartigan says, act like rednecks just to spite the audience. In the premiere episode, Mama June also explains that the Redneck Games are similar to the Olympics, but with a lot of missing teeth and a lot of butt cracks showing. In Hartigan's article, he says something profound to this idea, saying that these marked forms of white identity, meaning the redneck identity, each derive from and responds to the dissonance raised in the American cultural imaginary by linking whiteness and poverty. The show definitely further perpetuates these stereotypes, as one can imagine, with missing teeth pointing to a lack of financial stability and being able to afford nice teeth or take care of oneself in general, as outsiders might see it. In Hartigan's article, he also talks about how one of the Redneck Games organizers explained that observers like to think they're portraying Southern people as unintelligent, beer-swilling hicks, but that in reality they just like to have fun, which is similar to how Honey Boo Boo and her family describe their identities, saying that they're simply fun-loving people who don't like to take themselves too seriously. As Alana says, she likes to get in the mud because she likes to get dirty like a pig. A part of embracing the redneck identity is about not caring what others think, and doing it despite others, yes, but also participating in these acts because they're fun and oppose the uptight lifestyle that has been adopted by so many others around them. The redneck identity encompasses within it ideologies of embracing fatness and a low social status through embracing the stereotypes that are associated with Southern identity. In the episode My Crazy Family, while at the Redneck Games, Mama June says, "There's a lot of people that are bigger than me. They got 500 chins. I only got about 2 or 3, but I embrace it, my fatness." Interestingly, from Mama June's observation, we can see that the Redneck Games does encompass a lot of people of a larger body size, further adding to the stereotype that rednecks are large-bodied, low-class individuals. Yet, as we can see, Mama June's fatness does not appear to bother her at all. In fact, she exclaims that she embraces it and loves it, and by embracing it, shows no clear signs of wanting to change this part of herself, believing fatness not to be a negative trait, but potentially just another part of her redneck identity that she embraces. Interestingly, Mama June goes on to say that lots of women at the Redneck Games are of a voluptuous size, claiming they should put some clothes on and that all that vajiggle-jaggle is not beautimous. It seems almost as if Mama June is shaming other fat-bodied women for their appearance when Mama June shares a similar body size to them. It's confusing as to why Mama June would embrace the fatness on her own body, yet shame other women for their bodies, and therefore does seem to express narratives of fat phobia onto others, but not onto herself. Maybe this speaks to the idea that she's embracing her fatness, as Hartigan might say, just to spite others, and that really, anti-fat narratives have become present within her mindset. It's hard to know for sure, but does pose as a great contradiction to her statements about embracing her fat body when she does not embrace other fat bodies, showing potential internal conflict she may have with herself about anti-fat narratives. But the fact that Mama June says that there are a lot of fat women at the Redneck Games kind of speaks to how the TV show perpetuates the idea that fatness is encompassed in stereotypes of Southerners. In the episode of Very Boo Thanksgiving, we can see they further embrace their bodies when Alana says to Mama June, "I would love this big fat gobbleneck forever." And Mama June replies saying she'll be her big fat turkey. And this kind of exchange is seen as kind of bonding for both of them and almost like terms of endearment. Interestingly, this contrasts to Sturt Sritharan's article where she discusses how fat families are often seen shaming each other for their bodies rather than kind of embracing it in this way, and that many individuals were raised under the impression that fat people were an abomination, needing to be shamed, despite themselves and their own families being of a larger size. This demonstrates how Southern identities are not monolithic, and that there are a wide variety of perceptions pertaining to fatness in the South. Speaking to their rejection of classist narratives, in the episode Time for Sketty, the family appears to embrace their low social status, as we can see when Mama June says, "The deer aren't migrating like they used to be, and so nobody's hit a deer with their car and we've not been called up to a deer call." And Alana says, "It's been a while since I done had roadkill in my belly." The family's habit of eating roadkill speaks to their low social status, given that one of the main advantages for people who eat roadkill is that it's essentially free of cost. The fact that the family is not afraid to share this with millions on TV shows their rejection of classist narratives toward them, and that they aren't ashamed of their redneck habits, especially since outsiders may see eating roadkill as very unhygienic or as being unclassy, all associated with Southern stereotypes that are being perpetuated in the show. Mama June also explains proudly that she'll feed her family of 6 on about $80 a week, when studies show that the average American family of 6 will spend $250 a week on groceries. Mama June doesn't explain this in a way that she's asking for sympathy in any sense. Rather, she appears to be proud of herself for being able to do this for her family. While most would look at this and feel embarrassed for her or would feel ashamed themselves to admit something like this, instead, Mama June is proud of her ability to do so. In the episode of Very Boo Thanksgiving, Mama goes even further to say that off-brand names are sometimes better than name brands, saying that if it's not in a can, it's not for us. In fact, even Alana gets in on it, saying that can-shaped food is the most perfect food for eating. This is the food of the gods. This further demonstrates their reclaiming of their low social status through claiming that they are proud of the food choices and like them. And this sort of language implies that they would choose off-brand names even if they had the financial choice not to, showing that they're not ashamed and actually have preference for what others would call their low-class lifestyle. The fact that the namesake of the episode refers to their favorite family traditional meal, that is literally just tons of ketchup, melted butter, and stirred-up pasta, further perpetuates this idea that Southernness and poor food choices are tied together. In fact, Mama June even says that cranberry sauce gets the fruit in their diets, further perpetuating this idea that her and her family are of a low social status and low education level, and with poor food choices resulting in these assumptions, it's easy to see how fatness is tied in with such characteristics and Southern lifestyle in general. Later in the episode, Mama June's daughter, Jessica, or as they nickname her, Chubbs, also says, "I don't know why I like collard greens. I'm not supposed to because they're green," further displaying how their low social status may mean not splurging on more expensive foods, like vegetables, to the point that Mama June even says that she doesn't even know how to cook them. She ends up making them eat it raw for $10, saying that they'll do anything for $10, and kind of turns it into a punishment in a weird way. Like, you made me buy this expensive food, eat it and hate it so I don't have to buy it again. The fact that she says the girls will do anything for $10 further perpetuates their low social status, and their lack of knowledge on how to cook collard greens shows that they may be indulging in more often in less healthy foods. Once again, I believe that this shows how fatness, low social status, poor health, and a lack of education